Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here again today. We've been speaking with Johnny Medicine Bear. He's a shaman, an author, and a wonderful healer. In the first segment, Johnny talked to us about his genesis going from being in the military as a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War to having some revelations, which has led him on his shamanic and healing journey. We talked about the book From Savage to Shaman, which will hopefully have a release date next year, but we'll keep you tuned here on Spirit Anchor when that release date will be. So, Johnny, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about shadow energy patterns. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? I'm curious because I've never really heard that vernacular before.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks, Kristen. Well, it's been something I've become a little bit familiar with in this last year in particular. But basically, our shadow energy patterns or our shadow energy pieces are pieces of our psyche and pieces of our energy that we discard, suppress, and project on others. They're kind of like our deep secrets that we don't want to look at. And anytime we look at them, it's painful. We wish it wasn't there. We can take example, let's say just a child that grows up in a hostile environment full of anger, rage, and all of that. The child may very well just take all of their own anger and rage, not being able, it's not acceptable, or there's way too acceptable, and they stuff it in their basement. And so now this person, all full of rage and anger and everything, drives down the road in a great big Hummer, and for the smallest infraction, road rage occurs. This is all shadow energy that finds an opportunity to release itself. The person that is in a restaurant, a little bit of water gets spilled by the server or something like that, and the response is very inappropriate. That this is all the shadow using its opportunity to express this sort of thing. Shadow energy comes out in many other forms too. I've realized in this that my mother, who never protected me from the brutality of my father, other than with words or come to rescue me when I was hiding in the closet, said, "Okay, Johnny, he didn't mean it. It's for your own good," this sort of thing. I had stuffed for 50, 60 years the anger that I had towards my mother, and wasn't even aware that it was there until this last year, that I could see, and it was pointed out to me that my relationships with women, or let's more general, how I related to goddess energy, the earth included, the earth mother included, but was totally objective and was ego-centered. I wanted to use women. And then most of this was fairly subtle. And most of it, well, let me say that part may not have been subtle, but I was always a very nice man on the surface. Generous, kind, compassionate, fun to be with. All that's very true. But underneath was an underlying anger and rage that I didn't even know was there. And I wondered why I've spent my whole life pretty much by myself. See? And it was pointed out to me by my teacher that you can't see this because no one can see their shadow. Their ego covers all that very nicely and justifies the behavior patterns. But the rage and the anger that I had towards the feminine expressed itself in many ways. To resolve the shadow, or to do it, we have to be first, of course, aware that something is not quite right. And then become willing to take a walk into the basement and process, harmonize, balance, own, whatever it is that we need to do to dissolve and integrate that energy. I think back at the shadow anger that I had towards my father. Well, it created in me the savage that was willing to go out there and kill anybody. And this was all this shadow savage energy. I justified every bit of it. I went to Vietnam in 1972, carrying the flag, thinking that the people that were objectors or people that decide they go to Canada, whatever, skip the country and avoid the draft, well, they were just all a bunch of chickens and yellow bellies, and God, I had 1,000 names for them.
Sure.
And And so all of this is the justification so that I could go and act out and release some of that energy. It's not really who I am. And it's taken me the rest of my life of work to come to the space where I am today, of being able to have owned that, harmonized, balanced that savage energy and come into a space of peace and balance. But from this perspective here, I can see how all of that played in my life to guide me sort of on this journey. First, we get the imbalance and the request to bring it into balance. So our shadow energy, it's the one that just says, the ego just loves the shadow. You see, it says, okay, the chocolate bar, go ahead, throw it in your cart, throw it in your belly. If you're full, have a little bit more anyway. You know, this is just little pieces of shadow energy that's coming out. If it's okay to just steal something, even though it's small, you know, things like this, or perhaps small pieces of shadow energy. On a larger scale, there is group shadow, family shadow, nation shadow. You know, if I look at just as a broad sense here, generally with religions, if, you know, I go look at a church or something and it's all about light and love, but there's nobody really there that ever takes the time, or few, to explore the basement and harmonize some of the things that are not light and love about the organization or the institution or whatever it is. And so the yin and the yang of it gets way out of balance. And so our real ticket to freedom is to look at the bag we're dragging behind us, or open the door and look into the basement and have the willingness, perhaps with some guides and a little common sense, to own, explore, harmonize, and balance those darker pieces of ourselves that we tend to suppress and project on others.
Right. No, I really appreciate your transparency, and you've really delved deep. And I think that's important, because sometimes when we talk to people, we just get into the surfaceable aspects of certain things that are uncomfortable to talk about. And this definitely resonates with me. You know, with all of the chaos going on in the world, I feel like my shadow energy is rearing its ugly head. And I think that this is a great reminder to take a step back, put my ego in check, and know that I am larger than all of this, that my soul's journey is larger than all of this. And just to kind of keep it in perspective, is there a first step that we could start to kind of clear out some of that shadow energy? Is there anything that you might recommend reading, or a meditation or a prayer, to kind of get us in line with the guides to kind of help get rid of some of that, you know, that stored up and pent up shit that just is lingering in that shadow sense?
Kristen, thanks. Yeah. Well, there's several things. And some of them are, well, quite simple. Be honest. You know, honesty is whatever level of consciousness we have. I was very honest when I was over there in Vietnam. That's how you drop a bomb off a fighter plane. You pick it up. I was dropping bombs on people over there, and I was as honest as I could get. And that honesty said, this is necessary, and I'm a hero, and I'm here to protect us all, and all the rest of that. But if one has the courage to step back a few feet, really step back a few feet, take a few breaths, and look deeply at what they're doing. And you can do this in a meditation. You can do it in a quiet time. And then when they see some of these patterns that are not really healthy, that are destructive, that are hurting other people, that are not compassionate, loving, and caring, whatever they may be, to have the courage to own them. Maybe a little bit at a time, but making any small adjustment like that is to tell the shadow and the ego that, no, I'm waking up. I'm not going to participate this anymore. That's listening to the soul. That's listening to the heart. That's listening at a more meaningful level, and having now opened oneself to a deeper expression of life. We become available to energies then when we move up to a little higher consciousness level. We become available to energies out here that we're not even aware of down here at the lower levels. Right. You know, we think that's all there is. Right. So And there's a little book, if I could put this out here, it's very simple, a book. You can find it anywhere on Amazon or something like that. I read it many, many years ago. Robert Bly is the author, and it's called A Little Book on the Human Shadow. It's about that thick, it's probably not 30 pages, well, maybe 50 pages. It's not very big. But Robert Bly was impactful to me when I read that, and he spoke of the long bag we drag behind us, because into the bag also, important piece here, into the bag also goes our white shadow. When I was a little boy, I was told I couldn't draw. My art went there. When I was a little boy, I told I couldn't write, and I got a couple F's on the book reports, 7th, 8th grade, whatever. So that creative piece went in the bag. I've never wrote a thing in my, well, I say I haven't, but I've always seen myself as not a good writer. And I've always seen myself as not an artist. And yet then 10 or 15 years ago, I discovered digital photography. And so I used that expression, and it certainly is an artistic expression. But in the bag can go our white stuff too. So the gifts that come out when we start clearing the bag are manifold. If it's unpleasant to look at something, and the harder and the more painful it is to own some piece of oneself, the more light's going to be released when that piece is owned. So if one's unwilling to get into a little bit of pain, there ain't going to be much gain. It's like going to the gym. Sitting in the juice bar in the sauna isn't going to make muscles.
Right. No, and I think that's true. I think any work we do on this plane, whether it's spiritual or physical, you've got to put the work in to see the benefits and reap the rewards. So that's really a good point. You had brought to my attention a few years ago tipping, and I had never really heard of this modality, so to speak. And it's where you work with a table and your guides come through and you can ask questions, and based on which way the table tips kind of gives you your answer. For those people listening or watching that aren't really familiar, could you go into a little more detail about the tipping modality and how you were kind of introduced to this and kind of who came through for you?
Yeah, I sure can, Kristen. The table tipping, or as a seance, is what it is. You can do this with 2, 3, 4 people. It doesn't matter. You can make a big deal with 20, however. But basically what it is the table becomes an instrument. It's like a Ouija board kind of thing that, there's an energy that'll come into your Ouija board that animates it a bit. And the same with the table. We'll sit down, maybe 3 of my friends, and we all put our hands on the table. It uses our energy here. And then somebody will come through the table. Now, do I know that it's my father? If it says it's my father, I can't see him. But I have been with people that can see visually clearly the people that come in to the table, and they validated and verified that this one is such and such, or that's such and such, and things like this. So the table will stand up on 2 legs. It defies gravity, and if you've never experienced this thing, you're going to say, well, it can't happen. It can't happen. Well, that's what I said too, but it does happen and it does work. So for 4 or 5 years now, I've become a little bit of a practitioner of table tipping. You can find out a little bit about it on YouTube if you'd like. But some people see it as a curiosity, and that's about as far as they go. To me, I don't care about that piece of it. To me, it's a tool. And so the people that will come in through your table, if you get that far that you have a little seance, it may be your relatives or whatever. But as a tool, you can ask the table a question, and we've set up a little kind of like a little language here when the table's up, for 1 bump is a no response and 2 bumps is a yes response. It's quite simple. And the table can have its own expression. It can move a little harder, faster, slower, something like that. There'll be no doubt in your mind that you're doing this if you do it. So I use it as a tool. That's, for me, it's a tool. I don't use it as like a crystal ball. If it says something's going to happen or something, so okay, maybe yes, maybe no. But it's a tool for me.
It's really interesting, and I really enjoy doing that with you. But I would like to give a waiver out there to everybody. if you are not familiar with working with this kind of energy, I implore you not to get into a Ouija board or do the tipping without knowing how to ground yourself and how to bring the positive energy and the positive white light through. Because there are some nefarious entities out there that like to sneak their way through a Ouija board here and there. So just be very careful. Do it with somebody that has experience, using a Ouija board or doing the tipping. It can be a little daunting and a little scary too for people that aren't used to that. So always invite the white light. Right.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. That caveat is very good.
Well,
if you have an interest in this, find somebody that's done it a little and start with them. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's always anytime you're practicing something new, especially in the metaphysical realm. My opinion to fledgling metaphysical practitioners is always to align yourself with somebody that's been there and can kind of guide you through, the journey, so that you're not, doing anything that might harm you or your energy or your aura, or your chakras. So, Well, we're just about out of time here, and I wanted to thank Johnny Medicine Bear so much for your time. You are one of my favorite people on this planet, and our friendship means the world to me. But before we go, the music that you hear in this series, in the beginning and the end of each segment, is actually from Johnny Medicine Bear, and he is going to grace us with a wonderful song on the flute. It's beautiful, and Johnny, whenever you're ready, I will go ahead and list your website information at the end of this presentation in case anybody is interested in further contacting you. But thank you so much, and thanks everybody. Whenever you're ready, John.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm out here traveling around, by the way, in my motorhome, and during the summer I travel, and here in Bishop there's a lot of dust and everything, so I've got a little cough in my throat. So if I have to stop and cough, Spirit says go ahead and give it a try. So we're going to give it a whack here anyway. This is a little drone flute. It's a little different Native American flute. And so playing the flute is not like playing any other instrument, because it's not about playing it. It's about allowing and aligning ourselves with energy. So I just invite you to take a breath. Just feel the energy of the earth, the energy of divinity go through you, and allow the flute and the vibration of the music to speak to you. Oh, brother, sister, blessings.
Lovely. Thanks, Johnny. Love you. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Love you too.